So I just finished watching Raya and the Last Dragon, and I wanted to make a piece of fan art of it because I thought the movie was awesome. It had a lot of really cool colors, a really neat concept for all the characters and the backgrounds, just generally really aesthetically pleasing. While I made the piece, I realized that the water effect and the water bubbles in the piece actually have a bit of like magic to them. They're not just water, rather they look a little like they have like an iridescence to them, the same way that you would see in maybe like a soap bubble. I thought what might be a cool idea is to run a tutorial video where I show you how to draw like a water bubble, and then I also want to show you how I kind of had included the magic effect that I noticed in the film also. So before I start drawing our bubbles, I like to go out and look at some references. Let's take a look at this as an example. Not only is the refraction of the image around the bubble upside down because of the way that the bubble acts like a camera lens, it also has surface too. So light is interacting with this water droplet in two different ways. One, it's going through and refracting, and then two, it's also reflecting. So there's this fun potential that you have inside of water because it has both these properties. You get to do fun stuff with the reflections, but you also get to do really amazing stuff with the reflective part of the surface of the bubble. Look at some references and get an idea of how the light interplay occurs inside of them, and you can take that into your painting and do a lot of really great stuff. So the first thing I want to do is make an outline for my bubble. I'm going to just take a very kind of middle ground color here. I'm going to just draw maybe just a circle, and it doesn't matter here if it's perfectly round. Oftentimes they are not, so it's better if they have a little bit of character to them. And now that I've created just a little shape for my droplet, what I want to do is remember that that refraction that occurs in them means that the reflection of the sky is generally going to be on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and take a color that's a little on the brighter side, and I'm going to go ahead and put that on the bottom of my water droplet. And here I'm using a scratch brush. My scratch brush is one of my favorite brushes because it just allows me to blend a little bit easier. But you're super welcome to use something like a round airbrush, which kind of does the same thing, but it's a bit smoother. Now what I want to do is create a darker spot on the top. And this is generally because this is the area that would be the ground. And since we don't really have an environment other than this gray background, I'm going to assume that the ground is darker here, maybe because of a shadow or some element that makes it a bit darker. Like I mentioned, because a bubble is also reflective on the surface, we're going to add a highlight. We're going to switch to a brush that's soft and add a bit of a highlight to this side of it. And this is just the part of the surface, the skin of the actual water droplet that's just reflecting your light source. And the light source in this image is obviously coming from the right side. And you can, of course, make your reflection a little on the fancy side. You can add little degrees of reflective areas. Also, since water droplets are translucent, they allow light to pass through them. And so on this edge of the wall, if we're thinking about this droplet as in 3 dimensions, it's a sphere. Light will literally hit the surface and then penetrate, and then it may even reflect or be shiny on this side of the bubble. With that in mind, we can take the reflective part and then reflect it on the inside skin, since it's reflective on both sides. And then just a little bit of shaping up, and you have your basic bubble. So how does this apply to the drawing that has more than just a gray background? We're going to use the same principles. We're going to take a nice liner brush, something soft, and let's create a bubble that's maybe like right here. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. Since the sky in my piece has got a lot of pink, a lot of orange, and a lot of bright color, I'm going to go ahead and say that generally the refractive part will be maybe in this color right here. We'll go down and we'll add that to this part of the bubble. Again, this is the refraction of the sky. Now I want this part to be a little darker, just like we did in the first instance. I'm going to fade just a little bit here, just so it's not too dramatic. You don't want a drama bubble. And then I'm going to go ahead and say this is the brightest part of my sky. So that's the part that's going to reflect on the surface of the bubble. And again, I want to take this and go through the bubble and go ahead and reflect it on the other side, and you have pretty much your basic bubble. Let's go ahead and zoom out and see what that looks like. Great. It just looks like a little bubble floating around. So how is this bubble different than the bubbles that we saw in Raya? In Raya and the Last Dragon, the bubbles had a bit of a magic touch to them, meaning that they looked a little on the iridescent side. And the references that I would suggest here are probably more like soap bubbles that have the kind of colorful sheen that you see around the surface tension. So I want to kind of emulate that look in my piece too. The colors that I noticed in the movie were mostly reds and greens. They were a little on the more neon side. I'm going to go a little on the crazy side and actually go with something around here. I want to just put that around the skin of the bubble. And now I'm going to go ahead and add maybe something a little brighter, maybe fuchsia, and then say that that's going to be on this side. And there's no right answer here. It's magic whatever way you want it to be. As long as it's got a little bit of your own touch to it, I think you're fine. I think I want my bubble to be just a touch shinier, so I'm going to go ahead and say that this side is really kicked out in the light here. And maybe a little bit on this side too. Again, you can do so much with the reflections on the bubble. You can even probably say, okay, well, I want the other side to kind of reflect the sky as well. So we'll say that it's reflecting a little touch of the blue sky on this side. And maybe on this side, what's happening is a little bit of this water. The light is coming down, hitting the water, and then going back up, and then bouncing up and hitting that bubble. So we'll go ahead and say, okay, well, on this side, it's going to have a little bit of that lighting from that side as well. Let's say that it's so shiny that it's actually bleeding the light out just a bit, so we'll make a soft highlight on this side and maybe a little soft highlight on that side. And there you have it, a magical bubble from Raya and the Last Dragon. The water doesn't always stay perfectly spherical. Water can kind of bend and be shaped differently. What I want to do here is maybe draw maybe a bubble that's being stretched and elongated. Let's put it like right on her hands. And it's kind of being pulled and stretched a little bit. Now, same philosophy. This is just the same kind of bubble, but it's just stretched out. I'm going to do a refraction now, where it just takes the sky color, similar to what we did here. And I'm going to just go ahead and go on the bottom of that bubble and put that in there too. Something just a little darker on the top. The reflection on the surface of the bubble is over here, because that's the part that's getting close to the light source, and maybe just a little here too, because it's on the top, and I do expect that some of that light would hit that side too. Not as much though. All right, now it's time for some magic. I'm gonna go back and just grab the green that I used in this bubble just for consistency's sake. And put it on this side as well. And I want a bit of that brighter red color that we used, or pink. And go ahead and stick it on there too. And again, no right answers. It just has to look magical. And we're also going to make sure that the light is going through the bubble, and then maybe it's like getting picked up a little here and a little here. Now we're ready for some really fantastic highlights. It's going to reflect the sky on this side, and it's going to reflect the water on the other side, because the water is right below it, and I would think that the light hits the water and goes right back up onto that bubble. Now I just got to clean up the edges just a bit. I find that cleaning the edges a little too much might actually kill the effect, but I have seen great examples of really clean bubbles. But in my piece, I tend to not use really sharp outlines, and so I don't want to do it just in the bubble. Now I have just a little bit of highlight on this side and a little here too. And there we have it, a elongated, stretched out bubble. Now there's a lot of other things you can do with these bubbles. Maybe you can see through them, but there's so much rippling happening inside the bubble that maybe what happens is it kind of distorts the image that you're seeing through it. You're not going to really see her hand in crystal clear clarity. So maybe what it's doing is it's kind of blurring it out a little. And so if I zoom out again, you can't really see it. It's not like a pane of glass. Rather, it looks like the bubble of water has got a lot of volume in it, like you would expect looking through a block of water, that it's going to distort what the scene is on the other side. That's your call if you want to do it that way. I would think that it would distort it just a little bit, but I do like having just a little bit of clarity there. So that's how you draw your basic water droplet, and that's also how you draw the magic water droplets from Raya and the Last Dragon. Hope this was useful. We'll see you in the next video.